So that brings up an interesting question to me. When we get into the book of Jude and we see described for us the angels who sinned, Peter talks about this too, being held in everlasting chains, essentially in Tartarus. And Enoch even talks about the angels who sinned also being held in the unbreakable chains in a hot, a dry place. So, a couple of questions, and I want to see where you line up on this. Those angels who sinned, I understand those to be of the 200 that swore
Those
that
are the
oath at
Watchers.
Talmud. Yeah, who decided they were going to take wives of any whom they saw.
That's right.
But the question that I have, secondly, is because we understand that those are the ones being held in that place, and the Bible describes Jesus preaching as he descended into the earth to take the keys of sin and death. We speculate that he was preaching to those angels, like, "Hey, boys, the bell doth
Yeah,
toll
that
for
word
thee."
preaching can also mean declaring.
Sure, sure. So I guess my wonder is, at what point were they cast into Tartarus? Do you think it was because
Well,
if they
it's apparent in the book of Enoch. If we use the book of Enoch as our guide in this narrative, it's apparent they were cast into Tartarus after witnessing the destruction of their beloved sons
okay, so then
before the flood.
okay, so I guess follow-up question then. Since they, as you put it, they would have had legal right to the earth in so much as they were given a human wife. So they had and the marriage made it so they had a right to be here. Would that only extend up until the wife passed away and then
Oh no, that was
suddenly
through their offspring.
so the offering was the main anchor that once that destruction occurred, then all right, now you
They
go.
were, I believe there are some ancient, and I don't really want to go down this rabbit hole right now, but there's reason to believe, let's say, that the Watchers were invited before they came.
Mm,
So that's an interesting
yeah.
rabbit hole there, but we don't have time for that right now. But so the Watchers are executing rule by proxy, proximal authority through their hybrid children, through their hybrid sons, who are human enough to appropriate and execute the authority of Adam, to inherit the birthright. And they dominate the earth. Now, this is inferred. This part, again, I'm inferring. The story of the Watchers is very short in the book of Enoch, by the way. It's only in the book of Watchers. And which is, I think, I forget how many chapters the book of Watchers is, 32, but they're very short.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's not like this long narrative. Much has to be inferred, but there's enough information there that I think we can make logical inferences, such as that the offspring of the Watchers dominated the earth. They certainly subjugated the sons and daughters of Adam and Eve, because the book of the book of Enoch says that the giants were devouring all the acquisitions of men, all the acquisitions of the land. In other words, men were laboring to keep these things fed. And in the way that the context of the narrative is that they were forced to do so. And when they could no longer sustain the appetites of the giants, who were probably very many, then the giants began to devour mankind. There were at least 200 giants, but I think there were a lot more than that.
Sure.
Because the giants themselves are procreating. And if you're wondering how that might have been accomplished, you can read Birthright, and I have several hypotheses there. But so there's at least 200 giants, and they are dominating the human species, clearly. So the scenario would look like this is what I call the empire of the gods. This is what I believe the golden age represents, and indeed it does. Look at Zep Tepi, the first time. The I think we talked about this last time. The Egyptian tradition of the golden age, the first time. It's the gods are ruling on earth among men. It's the same with the Greeks. So the golden age of the Greeks when the gods are ruling, and in both cases it's a time of great knowledge and great abundance and peace and prosperity, except for in the Hebrew narrative.
Stark contrast.
In the Hebrew narrative, it's a disaster. It's a nightmare. And the giants are oppressing the human species and eating them, devouring them, and devouring everything, by the way. They were sinning against the beasts of the earth as well. And when you read that in context, you understand that it means they were eating them, because there was a prohibition on the consumption of flesh in the antediluvian world, according to Genesis, right? So the Watchers were consuming flesh, human flesh, and the flesh of animals. And just like we should disabuse ourselves of the notion that Adam was a gardener, we should also disabuse ourselves of the notion that these were big, dumb giants walking around with clubs, swinging clubs. These were exceedingly intelligent beings who were the offspring of a species that is more remarkable than our own in regard to their capabilities. And of course, I'm referring to an angelic race. So when you get human plus human, you get human. Even if you take the best human plus the best human, you still only get the best human as a result, if you're lucky. Well, what happens when you take humans, the best humans, these antediluvians, plus angels? Because that's what you get with these hybrids. You're going to get an extraordinary creature, completely unsanctioned. They were not supposed to exist. This is a grave transgression, and that's the Watchers knew that. They're essentially illicitly creating a new kind of creature in the universe, and for their own design, indeed, to usurp the human species on planet Earth. So the giants were likely exceedingly intelligent and cunning and obviously strong, very possibly telepathic. But it's likely that the human species was also telepathic at that time. So this is an inference that I make into the story. It's an extrapolation of the story, I think more accurately said. It's an extrapolation of the very short narrative in Enoch, that the result of this would have been the giants spreading out all over the earth and creating their own kingdoms. This is, in fact, the story of Plato, and I forget if I was talking to you about this the other day. This is what the gods do in Plato's narrative of Atlantis. Mm-hmm. I think we did discuss this.
Yes, we did.
So this is what I believe the Watchers were doing. Again, they're ruling by proxy. These are the living gods walking among men. And certainly they would have also, among all of their other transgressions, they would have desired to be worshipped. And so imagine this unfolding for thousands of years, at least 1,000. If you reckon the timeline of the Genesis 5 genealogy, if you take that as an accurate reckoning of time, then you at least get, according to the Septuagint, not the Masoretic text, according to the Septuagint, then you at least get, like, I think it comes out to be 1,200 years or so.
Yeah, doesn't the Septuagint add like an extra 100 years?
Yes, rather the Masoretes subtract 100 years.
Okay.
So, and we all are reading the Masoretic text. That's what our Bibles are. But the early church was reading Septuagint. So the minimum time frame here that we're dealing with is 1,000 years. 1,000 years of what? 1,000 years of the Watchers and their offspring ruling on planet Earth. That's the golden age. That's the empire of the gods. And the reason why I use that title very specifically, empire, not kingdom, empire, because these are various kingdoms, 200 kingdoms on Earth that are being governed by the giant hybrid sons of the Watchers, which again is Plato's story of Atlantis. We won't rehash that. We won't retread that ground. So now one might ask, so is that an allegory, or is that just a mythology, or is it veritable history? I would lean in the direction of veritable history. I think
Same.
if you look back into the past, if we could build a time machine and go back to the days of Noah, that we would witness an empire of the gods. Now, we would not, however, I do not believe that all of these cultures, all of these kingdoms, rather, would have been like Atlantis, where it's just everyone's enjoying this advanced technology and they're all living very comfortable lives, and with cities, with public transportation and skyscrapers. No, that's not what I envision at all, because it's oppressive. It's oppressive. The technology, the knowledge, some technology was given to the offspring of men, and they used it to do very bad things. It introduced a bloodlust, for example, into the world that had not previously existed, because they were making weapons. But I envision, and this is just my conceptualization of the antediluvian world. Okay, this is coming out of my imagination here.
Mm-hmm.
I envision a world in which the gods, the offspring of the gods, are in possession of advanced technology, but their subjects, the human beings that are subjugated to them, are living a very rudimentary existence, Bronze Age existence.
Sure.
And all of the produce that they're laboring to grow is in large part going into the coffers of their giant overlords, right? So it's a very oppressive hierarchy and a very depressing scenario for the human species.
It smacks of the Israelites when they were under Egypt's rule.
That's right. Yes. And I always like to reference the movie Stargate.
Sure.
When I think about this, and I don't know if the audience remembers the movie, not the TV show necessarily, the movie Stargate.
Mm-hmm. I do.
If you recall, I remember seeing that in the movie theater when I was a kid, back in the 90s. If you recall, that in the movie, they go to a planet through a Stargate. They use the Stargate to transport themselves, these military guys, to another planet. And when they get there, they discover a Bronze Age civilization, or perhaps even less than that is being dominated by this Egyptian deity, Ra, Amun-Ra, but he's an extraterrestrial and he has advanced technology. And that, I think, is perhaps somebody who was writing the script or coming up with the idea for that movie. Maybe they knew something that we don't in regard to archaeology, but I think that is what we would be looking at. So I would not be expecting to find grand cities like Atlantis, like these wonderful cities, the remains of these advanced cities. Rather, I would be expecting to find the remains of a Bronze Age or even perhaps a Stone Age civilization, because of the oppression. When you have that kind of oppression, you don't have time to build libraries and expand knowledge and build wonderful, beautiful architectural buildings. All your whole existence revolves around sustaining the gods.
Yep, subsistence.
So it would be the finding any kind of artifacts related to the advanced civilization, which would be the offspring of the gods themselves, the giants and their wives and their children. That would be like looking for a needle in a haystack.
Oh, man.
So that's the way I envision the antediluvian world. Now, not to say at all, as we talked about last time, that the offspring of Adam were stupid cavemen. Absolutely not. These were extraordinary human beings whose capabilities exceed our own. physically speaking, mentally speaking, they were of greater intelligence than we are. Why? Because they're closer to the source. They're closer to the prototypical human being, the source of our genome, Adam and Eve. So these are remarkable people. And in some cases, you might have had a flourishing in which you pockets of humans were flourishing that were perhaps not under the dominion of the Watchers and their offspring. Now, I have no idea if that would have been the case, but I suspect that many of the members in the line of Seth were not under the dominion of the Watchers and their offspring. I suspect that might be true. So they might have been living apart in a sort of a different civilization. That's just, me spitballing here. But anyway, I think that's what the dynamic looks like. I think we're looking at this very advanced brotherhood, is how I would put it. An advanced brotherhood of hybrid demigods. They have the technology. They have the knowledge. Men, they were taught how to make weapons and do other things, and basically were only given enough knowledge to be satisfied, but not enough to be a threat to the offspring of the Watchers. You see? Because that's what you and I would do if we were the Watchers. We would give these people who we want to subjugate just enough knowledge and technology to satisfy them, but not enough for them ever to become a threat to us or our designs.
That's like in the documentary that you were part of with the Fall Brothers, where they were talking about the Hollow Earth theory. I forget the man's last name, but Dave, he was talking about, he had originally been working on antimatter, and he gets approached by this team and says, hey, you're working on antimatter? Awesome. We've already solved it. We want you to come work for us. And then he learns about the DUMBs, the deep underground military bases. And inside there, we have military working with these otherworldly creatures, and we're giving them stuff that we consider to be like junks, salt water, rocks, weird elements that we just happen to have in abundance on Earth. And in exchange, they're giving us this amazing technology, but to them are these very low-level toys. I can imagine that being a very real scenario, even inside the antediluvian world as well.
Right? They wouldn't be giving us anything that would cause us to become a threat to them.
Exactly. Nothing that would be a problem for them.